The Gospel of Thomas. Prologue. These are the secret sayings that the living Jesus spoke, and Didymus, Judas, Thomas recorded. 1. And he said, whoever discovers the interpretation of these sayings will not taste death. 2. Jesus said, those who seek should not stop seeking until they find. When they find, they will be disturbed. 3. When they are disturbed, they will marvel. 4. And will rule over all. 3. Jesus said, if your leaders say to you, look, Father's imperial rule is in the sky, then the birds of the sky will precede you. So, if they say to you, it is in the sea, then the fish will precede you. Rather, the Father's imperial rule is inside you and outside you. 4. When you know yourselves, then you will be known. And you will understand that you are children of the living Father. 5. But if you do not know yourselves, then you live in poverty, and you are the poverty. 4. Jesus said, the person old in days won't hesitate to ask a little child 7 days old about the place of life, and that person will live too. For many of the first will be the last, and will become a single one. 2, 3, 4. Right? Thomas has a different version of these verses. When they are disturbed, they will rule. When they rule, they will rest. Prologue. Didymus Thomas. This name appears in this form elsewhere. Only in the Syrian Acts of Thomas, chapter 1, although the name Judas Thomas occurs in some Syrian manuscripts, John 14:22, and in the prologue of Thomas, the contender, also of Syrian origin. The three names, only Judas is a bona fide name. Didymus and Thomas are the Greek and Semitic words. Three names. Of the three names, only Judas is a bona fide name. Didymus and Thomas are the Greek and Semitic words for twin, respectively. Thomas does function as a given name elsewhere. The title, which occurs at the end of the Gospel, ascribes it to the Apostle Thomas, who is thought by the early church to have evangelized eastern Syria and India, whether Judas Didymus Thomas and the Apostle Thomas were originally two different figures melded together in the lore of Syrian Christianity is a matter for further investigation. The Father's imperial rule. The Coptic Temtero, the Coptic is conveniently rendered kingdom, but as elsewhere in Scholars Version translations, here also this archaism has been abandoned. Normally, Scholars Versions renders this term imperial rule, as it is here. Often, however, the term is used with a spatial connotation, as for example, when persons are said to enter the kingdom. In such cases, Scholars Versions translates the word using domain, capturing this spatial dimension. Often in the Gospel of Thomas, the term is used without predication, that is, without specifying of God, of heaven, of the Father, etc. To render these technical uses of temtero more clearly for the modern reader, the translators have supplied fathers, the most common predication for this term found in Thomas, and will become a single one. This phrase know what is in front of your face, and what is hidden from you will be disclosed to you. For there is nothing hidden that won't be revealed. His disciples asked him and said to him, "Do you want us to fast? How should we pray? Should we give to charity? What diet should we observe?" So Jesus said, "Don't lie." 3. And don't do what you hate. 4. Because all things are disclosed before heaven. 5. After all, there is nothing hidden that won't be revealed. 6. And there is nothing covered up that will remain undisclosed. 7. Jesus said, "Lucky is the lion that the human will eat, so that the lion becomes human." 2. And foul is the human that the lion will eat, and the lion still will become human. 8. And he said, "The human one is like a wise fisherman who cast his net into the sea and drew it up from the sea, full of little fish." 2. Among them, the wise fisherman discovered a fine large fish. 3. He threw all the little fish back into the sea and easily chose the large fish. 4. Anyone here with 2 good ears had better listen. 9. Jesus said, "Look, the sower went out, took a handful of seeds, and scattered them. 2. Some fell on the road, and the birds came and gathered them. 3. Others fell on rock, and they didn't take root in the soil, and didn't produce heads of grain. 4. Others fell on thorns, and they, Graham Thomas adds a third verse, and nothing buried that will not be raised, is opaque, but occurs more than once in Thomas, here as in 23:2. It designates a kind of soteriological status without further explanation. In 22:5, however, it is associated with the notion of androgyny. Some Gnostic groups held that the origin of human sin was the creation of woman as distinct from man, a departure from the sexually non-differentiated first human, Adam. Thus, the ultimate human destiny was to return to a primordial state of androgyny, the state of divine perfection before the fall. The meaning of this saying is obscure. In antiquity, the lion often symbolizes feelings of passion and pathos. To eat the lion may be to overcome such feelings. Likewise, to be consumed by the lion is to be overcome by them. However, may 7b, however, 7.2b, however, may hold out hope by one reading this clause indicates though the passions may temporarily dominate a person, ultimately she will overcome them. But the phrase is very obscure. Luckily, the Greek Makarios is conveniently rendered blessed. S version has replaced this archaism with a number of alternatives which better reflect the versatility of this word. Here the lion's fate is viewed as good fortune, for in being consumed it has become part of the human. 8.1. The human one, literally, the person, Coptic, prom, is like the reference is unclear. There is a figure in some Gnostic systems known as anthropos, or person, who is a kind of primordial figure, the first person. It may be that Thomas' text intends to render this title in Coptic. Choked the seeds and worms ate them, and others fell on good soil, and it produced a good crop. It yielded 60 per measure, and 120 per measure. 10. Jesus said, I have cast fire upon the world, and look, PM guarding it until it blazes. 11. Jesus said, this heaven will pass away, and the one above it will pass away. 2. The dead are not alive, and the living will not die. 3. During the days when you ate what is dead, you made it come alive. When you are in the light, what will you do? 4. On the day when you were one, you became two. But when you become two, what will you do? 12. The disciples said to Jesus, we know that you are going to leave us. Who will be our leader? 2. Jesus said to them, no matter where you are to go to James the just, for whose sake heaven and earth came into being. 13. Jesus said to his disciples, compare me to something and tell me what I am like. 2. Simon Peter said to him, you are like a just angel. 3. Matthew said to him, you are like a wise philosopher. 4. Thomas said to him, teacher, my mouth is utterly unable to say what you are like. 5. Jesus said, I am not your teacher. Because you have drunk, you have become intoxicated from the bubbling spring that I have tended. 6. And then he took him and withdrew and spoke 3 sayings to him. When Thomas came back to his friends, they asked him, what did Jesus say to you? 10. It is often asserted that the yields of 60 and 120 persons measure are extraordinarily large, but if the reports are contemporary historians, Pliny, Heterodotus, or any indication, they are quite average. 10. Fire. The image of fire is chosen here for its provocation and threatening effect. Fire was a constant menace in antiquity. Though apocalyptic visions often involve fiery conflagration, this need not be the sense in which it is used here. 11.1. This, heaven, and the one above it. Ancient cosmology presupposed the existence of a number of heavenly spheres suspended above the Earth's surface, enclosing it like thick layers of ethereal paint. Paul presupposes this notion in 2 Corinthians 12:2-4, where he refers to the esoteric, rabbinic, mystical, traditional, and ascending through these heavenly realms, eventually to come into presence of God. These multiple heavenly spheres were considered as parts of the created order. Hence, their transitory nature here is used to emphasize the transitory nature of the entire created order. 11.4. When you were one, you became two. The phrase, though obscure, may refer to the fall from primordial, undifferentiated unity and original perfection, to which the Gnostic anticipates returning. For this concept, see the notes on Thomas 4:3. 12:2. James, the just. James, the brother of Jesus. Mark 6:3. Matthew 13:5. Galatians 1:19. Was known as James the Just in antiquity. Eusebius, Ecclesiastical History 2:23-4-7. 13:5. Am not your teacher. Because you have drunk, you have become intoxicated. Or, I am not your teacher, for you have drunk and become intoxicated. Thomas 13. Thomas said to them, if I tell you one of the sayings he spoke to me, you will pick up rocks and stone me, and fire will come from the rocks and devour you. 14. Jesus said to them, if you fast, you will bring sin upon yourselves. 2. And if you pray, you will be condemned. 3. And if you give charity, you will harm your spirits. 4. When you go into any region and walk about in the countryside, when the people take you in, eat what they serve you, and heal the sick among them. 5. After all, What goes into your mouth won't defile you. What comes out of your mouth will. 15. Jesus said, when you see one who was not born of a woman fall on your faces and worship, that one is your father. 16. Jesus said, perhaps people think I have come to cast peace upon the world. 2. They do not know that I have come to cast conflicts upon the earth. Fire, sword, war. 3. For there will be 5 in a house. There'll be 3 against 2, and 2 against 3. Father against son, and son against father. 4. And they will stand alone. 17. Jesus said, I will give you what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, what no hand has touched, what has not arisen in the human heart. 18. The disciples said to Jesus, tell us, how will our end come? 2. Jesus said, have you found the beginning? Then that you are looking for the end? You see, the end will be where the beginning is. Congratulations to the one who stands at the beginning. That one will know the end and will not taste death. 19. Jesus said, congratulations to the one who came into being before coming into being. 2. If you become my disciples and pay attention to my sayings, these stones will serve you. 3. For there are 5 trees in paradise for you. They do not change summer or winter, and their leaves do not fall. 4. Whoever knows them will not taste death. 14:4. Heal or care for countryside. The Greek word here translated as countryside is ambiguous. Literally, it means places. But the places in question could be either the rural areas in between small towns or the towns themselves. 16:4 alone. In other texts, this Greek loan word, monachos, may indicate a unique solitary or lonely one, an unmarried one, or later, as a technical term, a monk. It may have similar connotations here, though this is far too early to think of Christian monks per se. Discipleship of this order in Thomas probably involves the solitary life of the wandering ascetic. 18:2. The end will be where the beginning is. The phrase makes sense in the terms of Gnostic notions of the creation. Basic to most forms of Gnosticism is the notion that the world is evil, the result of a rebellious angel, demiurge, attempting to create something apart from God. The goal, end, of the Gnostic existence is to escape the created world and to return to the state of perfection that existed in the beginning before the creation of the world.